Welcome to Reccast, a video podcast series about all things AI in recruitment, brought to you by Recrite.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Reccast, the podcast series where we explore the use of AI in recruitment, looking both at the opportunities, ethical considerations, and pitfalls. I'm your host, Jussi Hinkkanen, and with me I have my co-host and colleague Miikka Tuomo. And today we have a really interesting guest, as Jussi Hinkkanen, the CEO, founder, and Chief Product Officer of Fuzu, joins us. Jussi has an interesting background. Prior founding Fuzu, he's already had an extensive experience working, especially in Africa, both with Nokia, Microsoft, various UN programs. I'll let him talk more about that. But welcome, Jussi.
Thank you very much.
And actually, that's where we could start. So before we get to Fuzu, please tell us a bit about your background. How did you end up working in Africa?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. When I was a young boy in my teens, my father used to work a lot in Southeast Asia. I spent a few summers in mid-1980s in Singapore and Malaysia, and I fell in love with emerging markets at that point. The energy, people's desire to move forward in life, and kind of the ambition was there. Then many years later, I started feeling this urge that Finland felt a little bit too boring, a bit too sort of stagnant, and that was sort of early 2000s.
Yeah.
And
Heyday of Nokia.
Exactly, and I had actually made a conscious decision not to work for Nokia.
Yeah.
All my friends went to work there at that point.
Many of us made that decision. Some stuck with it.
Exactly. And so then sort of early 2000s, I had been then working for Metso and Konecranes, so more traditional businesses, and had been working quite extensively in Europe and US and China. But then I still felt that intellectually super challenging stuff, rolling out ERPs and knowledge management platforms, all that sort of things, very much at the heart of Konecranes' strategy. But then I felt that I need something else, and then I decided to jump outside of private sector. I was actually applying for work at the United Nations in Vietnam, but then that sort of fell through. Then I landed on a job in Mozambique, and had never been to Africa before, and I hadn't actually even considered Africa too much. But I wanted to work for United Nations, kind of see that what could I do with my skill set to catalyze, growth of these emerging economies, and that was kind of,
Was it a tech job?
It was, yeah. So I was in charge of UNDP, which is the United Nations Development Program. I was in charge of their ICT for Development Program. Right. And so how do you use IT to, let's say, improve the education sector or health service delivery or e-government? And then what happened, then I got to know quite quickly the Mozambican Minister of Science and Technology. A very interesting gentleman, had his PhD from Netherlands, a super smart guy, and he then wanted me to become his advisor. So then I moved inside the government, and I spent 3 years advising him, building strategies, fundraising, building e-government frameworks, high-speed networks, all that sort of things. And that was kind of my university to understanding how you get things done in a super complex environment. The eighth poorest country in the world, so it was evident there was lack of capacity and knowledge of how to do these things, but it was a super exciting time.
Yeah. Sounds interesting. And that was kind of time when internet was emerging. I guess you guys were building infrastructure.
Exactly. Yeah. It was kind of early days, and it was early days also for this whole ICT for development movement at the time. But yeah, many moons ago.
Interesting.
And if we get to the Fuzu, would be interesting to hear how that started. I know that there probably has been things happening between the story you already told and founding Fuzu. But anyway, how the Fuzu started?
Yeah.
And when?
So Fuzu started sometime maybe around 2013. But then what sort of led to it was many of the lessons I gained during my years in Mozambique, and then during the 5-year stint with Nokia, and then Microsoft. And during those years, it was very sort of clear that one of the things that was going to determine the future of Africa, but also then the future of, in many ways, Europe, is what's going to happen to the young population growing on the continent. And if they don't have a pathway to employment, pathway to income, we're going to be screwed up here in Europe as well. And so then I analyzed the different type of platforms, the traditional job search platforms, and realized that they don't really provide the needed support for anybody. So this traditional classifieds model where you basically just see a list of jobs.
Yeah.
But if we don't understand what these jobs are about, what do they actually require, what kind of skills and knowledge you need to get to these positions. So I then wanted to start building something smarter. So that was one thing that led to Fuzu. But secondly, then I was one of the guys who was supporting kind of the emerging tech ecosystem in Africa, and I sort of fell in love with that movement, and sort of setting up also tech hubs and incubators and startup funds in a number of countries, and kind of saw that what this young generation of entrepreneurs can actually do. Same thing what we have seen here in Finland as well, but these guys are completely on a different planet in terms of adopting global best practices and new tools and so forth. So I wanted to be part of that movement as well. So those are sort of few reasons.
Where was that focused? Was that like Kenya or what countries kind of in the forefront of it?
So if you look at the tech ecosystem in Africa, there was the kind of the emerging stuff happened in South Africa initially, but South Africa is a little bit of a stagnant economy, unfortunately, and so therefore then these big hubs that then started driving this movement were then basically Kenya first, and then later Nigeria.
Right.
So I'd say that Kenya and Nigeria are have been the leading countries that have also been building several unicorns over the past 5 years, attracting also massive amounts of capital. And so still, of course, in the global context, it's small, but if you look at sort of 2009, African startups got maybe 300 million US dollars of funding, and now it's already at the level of about 5 billion. And so it's grown quite a lot, mostly driven by those two countries, but there's others as well. Ghana, Senegal, picking up. Egypt has been very strong, and so forth. So there's a number of places,
And are those the markets you had in mind when you started building Fuzu as well, or was it more of a pan-African kind of effort?
Yeah, so the idea, of course, was that we would be pushing Fuzu rapidly to new markets, and so that we would be sort of pushing for the maturization of the markets rapidly and formalization. The traditional talent acquisition and recruitment in these markets has been very much informal. So using your networks of influence and people that you know to find jobs. But we really wanted to change that. So we wanted to change that it's more of a merit-based, more competency-based way of finding talent. And so therefore we wanted to kick off from those more mature ones and then scale to the smaller ones. But that transition to formal markets hasn't happened as quickly as everyone was predicting 10 years ago when we kicked this off.
So it's slower.
It's slower, and there's a number of reasons. If you look at emerging markets in general, grew very rapidly, sort of from early 2000s to maybe around 2014, 15. Some countries even double-digit numbers, but then it slowed down quite dramatically. And so if you look at economies, let's say like Kenya growing roughly at the level of about 5% per annum, which is actually pretty decent. But when your population base is growing by about 2.5%, then actually it means
you should go faster.
You should go faster. So the economy is actually stagnant at those numbers.
Also have to ask that what is the story behind the name?
Yeah, so we went through a massive number of options, and I think we had maybe 200 names we went through. Then we also then tested all those names in global markets all the way to Japan and LATAM and Southeast Asia. So what does it actually mean in local languages? So we wanted to have a short name, and we want to have something that we could also own .com domain. So pretty difficult. There are not too many 4-letter .com domains out there, but we landed on Fuzu. It comes from a Swahili verb, kifuzu, and Fuzu basically means self-made success. And so success that you achieve through your own hard work. And so it sort of symbolized quite nicely what we wanted to do, empower people to become the best versions of themselves, and so that's sort of stuck with us. And then we also managed to get the .com domain. Started negotiating from $80,000 first. Then went down quite significantly, but still, that was our first investment that we got.
Got the domain.
Exactly.
That's good. By the way, you can describe the challenges you wanted to solve with the Fuzu product, but how would you say, now you look back and now you look at your product today, would you say you differ from a more of a traditional job board or even a more advanced ATS?
Yeah.
What are the main differences?
I said that we are a two-sided platform, so we have the job seeker proposition and we have the employer proposition. There's a number of differentiators. So for the job seeker side, Fuzu is not just a job search platform, but it's also a learning platform. So we have our own learning management system. with hundreds of courses. We have inspirational articles. We have tools that then support you in building your profiles. We have access to coaching solutions. We have chat lines and so on. So it's quite a comprehensive system. So that's one thing that differentiates us. The second thing is that since the beginning, we actually started building a system, not a classifieds platform, not a marketing platform, but a system which has intricate data architecture behind it with taxonomies and well thought out structures and so forth. So the idea was from the get-go to actually build a system that would allow us to customize the user journey, customize the experience for every single user. And why that was important, because we realized that typically when you build a startup, you think about, hey, what's the segment I want to go after? And then you sort of, you really build the proposition for that small, narrow segment. But we realized that none of those segments in our markets would be big enough to sustain the business. And so then we had to then build a proposition that is pretty broad, but still customized. And so what that meant then is that we wanted to use data and the kind of the analytical capabilities of the platform then to make sure that if you are entry-level, let's say, worker, or you are a recent graduate, or you're a senior person, you would always see a world inside Fuzu that actually matches with your current level of expertise, your ambitions, and so forth. So whenever you then enter Fuzu, you always see stuff that is actually relevant for you. Bit like what Netflix is and the modern platforms do nowadays, but we wanted to do that from the get-go.
So kind of the key data entity for you is not the job post, but it's more the candidate or the person.
Yeah, so candidates give us signals about themselves by building profiles or making choices on the platform, what they are viewing there, what kind of jobs they are applying for, and all that data then influences what kind of recommendations we make. But of course, the best source of data is the user profile. So which then the kind of the central concept inside the profile is the concept of skill. And so basically what skills I have, what skills I want to build, and so forth. So that's maybe the most relevant data point we use.
And there you probably have AI capabilities in use for the customization of the...
Yeah, exactly. So we started initially with just more traditional calculation-based expert algorithms, which basically just looking at, hey, that you have ICT, experience in your profile, so let's then recommend you then ICT type jobs. But then quite rapidly we then started building algorithms, and algorithms then took into consideration the skills and level of experience, what you have, then years or months of experience, all kinds of things, and then started sort of let's say creating different type of matching algorithms, which then initially were just calculation based. But then when we realized that we were calculating hundreds of thousands of matches every single day, and I was looking at the server bills, I was damn, this is not going to work out. It's not going to scale to millions and millions of users. So then we already then around maybe 2017 then started building our first then machine learning models. And so that was kind of the start of our AI journey.
What machine learning technologies have you guys used? Where do you host your stuff?
So we operate at the moment at AWS. So our models are run there, and number of different techniques, of course, there. But I think that we have at the moment maybe about 10 different models that we use for different type of purposes, and each of them are sort of purpose built for specific use case.
So you guys have built it already for quite a while and taught your own models.
Yeah. The first set of first machine learning model, what we did was basically trained, which is still actually in use. So it was trained based on those expert algorithm calculations. Right. So basically, the expert algorithm that gave you then that, hey, how well does my work experience and skills match with the requirements of the job post? And job post as well is not just a post, but it also has the same data architecture behind it. And so we were able to compare apple to apple, and so basically we had that scoring then in the database, and then we used that scoring set of, I think we had maybe 60 million of those matches in the database based on the expert algorithm, which we then use then to train the first machine learning models. And it's actually pretty accurate way of doing it.
Have these kind of development of the large language models over the past few years, has that helped you guys? taken you to the next level?
I think it has actually more helped our competitors, to be honest.
They're catching up with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that actually that's what's happening at the moment. Of course, is that all these tools are making it much faster and much easier for you than to developing these things. And you know, many of these first movers, they've been spending years or even millions of dollars in building fancy models by themselves.
Training your own models.
Exactly. And then suddenly you have a model that's out of the box that can do better than yours. So that's it's changing the game quite radically at the moment. And so we're leveraging them to some extent already, but not as much as I would like to.
Yeah. But you still, of course, have you have a very good use case for it. So I would say.
Yeah, I say that kind of our mode at the moment compared to the competitors is very much the data architecture. Yeah. And so if you look at the classified, let's say, platforms and the competitors in that space, it's very difficult for them to follow us because they have not built that data architecture and data model from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And so all those classification models and so forth, all the taxonomies and all of those are missing. And when that sort of interlinkage between, let's say, the candidate and the job is missing, and that then makes this makes this much more difficult. But then at the same time, the tools are developing fast. You can't sit still. So they will definitely get where we are as well.
How much do you have? Because it's quite interesting. You said you have your own, of course, data architecture, your own kind of a taxonomy, and now that you operate mainly in Africa, but I know you do stuff in Europe as well. Mm-hmm. Do you see differences in your taxonomy between the different markets, different continents?
Yeah.
Thinking of it for a sales position, for example, these are the skills that the salesperson needs. Are they kind of different?
Yeah. I say that when you get to mature markets, Europe, US, the granularity of those, let's say, taxonomies typically increases.
Right.
You have different types and more specific, let's say, type of roles in these markets. So that increases, for example, the number of skills. One thing what we did early on was that we used, so we built our own skill taxonomy. Yeah. But we used the European ESCO model as a foundation. But ESCO, I had been working with knowledge management a lot in the past. And one of the key principles there is that you need to think about it from the viewpoint of the end user. Right. So how well is the end user able to understand this taxonomy? Yeah. Okay.
Where do my skills fit in
if you have 5,000 skills, how on earth are you going to find the ones that actually are relevant for you? Yeah. So then we decided that, hey, we need to have a taxonomy that's simpler, because mostly we're using the skill taxonomy for, it's kind of a tagging logic. So basically tags things and then makes it searching easier and matching easier. So we ended up with taxonomy of about 1,000 skills. Right. And so now that we are then looking at European markets, we need to increase it. But then I still don't want to go all the way to that super granular tool level type of taxonomy, because that's going to be still challenging. Maybe we should, but at least I haven't seen the need yet.
Yeah. If thinking of you are selling your product to a new customer, for example, how much do you need to have the discussion about the use of AI in the product, or is it like a no-brainer? Or because it's still fairly new for many buyers.
Yeah, it's a good question. It differs a lot. So for some clients, it's a plus. So they want to be sort of riding the AI wave. So in that sense, it's a good thing. But then of course they don't understand what it does. And of course, even in our case, we're trying to make it work in such a way that it's relatively transparent to the user that what it does. And so but I don't think that it is. I don't think that many of the clients still understand, the potential, but also then of course the challenges with it as well. But I'd say it's been a plus still when you push it. But I don't think that my team, when they're selling, for example, in the core African markets where we operate, I think they are just using it as one sales point, but then they mostly focus on the user experience and the service levels and so forth.
Because I think that the whole market, even internationally, of course, I have a kind of a narrow view to that. But anyway, it's based on few a reference case is that Amazon used AI 2018 and they needed to cancel the system because it was not working and so on. So people, like you said, they don't understand that well. And then there are those like big cases that are referred all the time that it's not working because 6 years ago someone needed to shut down their AI in recruitment. So I believe that there are, of course, many different levels on the buyers as well, how well they understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a pretty sort of broad spectrum of also organizations we work with, but at the moment we don't work with the global giants that much. So there's few of them, but yeah, because they of course have more, let's say, stricter guidelines, and they need to understand exactly how the models folks operate and so on. Yeah.
On that topic, by the way, how much have you spent time with the new EU legislation on AI? Especially in terms of recruitment. We had a guest, Alon, a few episodes ago, and she had a very good master's thesis on the topic, and we kind of started digging into it. Probably we'll have another guest on that topic as well. But have you guys spent time on it now that you're looking into the European market?
Yeah, exactly. So that's actually one of the topics for this year now to analyze it deeper. And I think that the way we are still interpreting it mostly is it's about just the transparency side of things and really making it clear what the machine does and what it doesn't do, what is the information it uses for let's say analyzing candidates. We don't do decision making, so we don't do any automated decision making for the clients. So it's basically we're just using it as a tool for making the analysis faster and easier.
Matching the skill set of a candidate to a required skill set for a position.
Yeah, so we are basically looking at it in few different ways. So we are basically matching the candidate profile to the job description. So we are looking at, for example, the skill taxonomies and how well the kind of those match. We also look at then kind of the length of work experience, the type of jobs that you've been having, the level of seniorities, the level of education, what you have there. And so forth. So we try to take a pretty comprehensive look into that. But then on top of that, we also then use non-AI based tools. So we also have in our markets, one of the things that's important to understand about emerging markets is very often you have massive number of candidates.
Yeah.
So you might have 5,000, 10,000 per position. Yeah. Of course, not always. Typically, you have, let's say, 200 guys.
Yeah.
Okay. But even going through 200 CVs is quite a job.
Yeah.
And so one thing what we also then embed there is that we use also then different type of tests. So we use psychometrics, we use aptitude testing, we use also skill testing, and those then give you kind of additional kind of dimensions to reviewing also then candidates, and additional data points also then to understanding, how these guys are with soft skills or hard skills, and that whole thing is then available for employers when they analyze the candidates. We also have their kind of philosophical also let's say angle there as well, that whenever it's more about junior positions, we try then to let's say increase the weight of, let's say, the testing solutions, because you don't have that much experience.
No.
Then it's more about your potential, it's more about kind of your aptitudes. And so therefore the weight of those tests is higher for entry-level positions. But then when you go to more senior positions, then it's more about your past experience. So it's more about kind of the rear mirror than the windscreen.
Do you see a big difference? You mentioned, of course, that the number of candidates, for example, in Africa and the emerging markets are different. But do you see a difference in attitude against the automation or AI between the Africa example and Europe?
No, I don't think. So the interesting thing about emerging markets is that they want to be, at the forefront of also then technological disruptions as well. And so therefore, I think that I say that maybe the attitude towards new disruptions and technologies even more positive than it is here. I wouldn't say that Finland, for example, is a forefront of any disruptions in these spaces. So we're typically a laggard. And we monitor that what everyone else is doing, and we're pretty skeptical towards anything new. And so in that sense, I'd say that it's more modern there in many ways.
It's kind of interesting from a product development standpoint that you guys are exposed to very different markets. They operate here in the Northern Europe, and then you have a very big foothold in Africa. So you got to get exposure into that different dynamics that you're seeing. How does your product roadmap look going forward? What's happening next for Fuzu? What are people working on?
So we're working now with few big partners at the moment, and so working on let's say improving improving the platform in a number of different areas. I'd say the big focus at the moment is on the employer side, and so really sort of making it easier for employers to, let's say, review candidates in a transparent and efficient way, supporting kind of the process of managing the recruitment flow.
Kind of ATS-like features.
Yeah, so we have a pretty advanced ATS already, and so you can share shortlists with your clients. You can collaborate with a larger number of let's say larger team, give them reviews about individual candidates, all that sort of things. Headhunting tools. We also do automated headhunting on the platform, which means that whenever you have, let's say, a position out there, we also then recommend you passive talent. So we match then, our talent pool is about 2.5 million people at the moment. So we also then find that, hey, here's actually a list of 200 super candidates for this position. They didn't apply, but if you want to, you could actually reach out, and so you then can send them a message. So making that feature set kind of more advanced, making it multilingual, big goal is one of the things for this year. And so making it then, that it could be, all the models would also then work in a number of different languages. So it would be easier for us then to scale to new markets which require language versions. And then one thing what I would love to do then is that, because we have so much data and we have so much understanding about the users and their needs, is then integrate some level of let's say intelligent chat engines into the platform as well, so which would then be able to guide individual users and act like a virtual coach. What we can see, for example, is that, hey, this is where you are at the moment. These are the type of positions that you are applying for or you're interested in. It's very easy for us then to say that, hey, this is the gap between you and this desired opportunity, and what are the steps that you would need to take to get there, and what kind of, let's say, learning materials would be helpful for you getting there, and making it conversational. So that's one thing. I don't think we will get there still 2024, but 25.
Would those be kind of paid for consumer-facing features, or?
Yeah, again, a good question. In our current markets, let's say the consumer base is really, really stingy. And so the B2C monetization is challenging. There is a lot of potential there, but in these markets, people are not used to paying, for example, SaaS type of subscriptions as individual users. The top end of the economy who are similar consumers as us, yes, they are, but then the number of those,
that's not big enough market.
It's too small. So then, and Africa actually is a super interesting place when it comes to business model innovation, because anyone operating there has to be massively creative in terms of how are you actually going to monetize consumers. And so that has led then to a lot of super interesting models. That's how people are doing that. And what we see, for example, not with us or in our space, but many other spaces, is that whatever the service is, it actually becomes more of a fintech solution rather than a service, because it's all about then providing, let's say, funding to the client to be able to purchase your product, and then your actual profits come from the interest margins and so forth. So there's super interesting models there, and like in this space, what you should be able to do, for example, is then this sort of drip feeding of the payment. So then you would collect, let's say, 2 € or 5 € per day, and then maybe on day 5 or day 10, you have then saved enough, and now you have access to the service. Different type of creative models. But I say that there's a lot of potential there. No one has really cracked it in this space. And of course, I always enviously look at someone like LinkedIn who can say that, hey, 50 € a month for the subscription, just, that's what people pay. In my market, it's never going to happen.
And it's not the B2C.
Exactly.
I think it's anyway people with the company credit cards paying 50 € per month.
Exactly.
I think that the whole field of HR tech is still looking for ways to monetize the B2C side. We have had numerous discussions about different video CV banks, or some kind of that, because we basically have the tech to collect the video-based CVs, but who will pay for it? And I think that it's still far away that actually the candidates would start to pay for that kind of
and there's also
services.
sort of ethical considerations there as well, because you don't want to, and you cannot, of course, create any barriers of entry. So everyone needs to have access to the same opportunities and so forth. And then you also then can't really monetize also services that then by paying, you would then sort of stand significantly taller than everyone else. So you have to be very careful that what kind of service you can actually monetize. And then, of course, even if you look at the Finnish market, the challenge here is that much of the B2C services are public in the public domain, and so there's also no culture for individual job seekers to actually invest.
Pay for
themselves.
job coaching or
exactly.
skills
So
coaching.
we don't really have that culture here. We're kind of expecting that the state takes care of that, and I think that we would need to become a bit more active here and to invest in our own growth as well, and so forth. So, but yeah.
I think there must be opportunity there, but it might be quite hard to crack, and you kind of need to have the critical mass of applicants and the kind of candidates in the system before you can start up. Selling this
exactly.
Kind of
you
stuff.
need millions of people.
There needs to be the earning logic first to get those million, and then you can start upselling on top
Exactly.
of that.
Exactly.
So you've been working with first with the machine learning and then more like AI, like almost 10 years or I don't know how you
it's
count
about
it.
7, 8.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of a company that is now having like a very traditional recruitment process, not tools, not their tools are very well automated or they are not using AI. Do you have any like advice? How should they approach the whole like AI topic in the recruitment? Or what would you like say?
Interesting question. I think, first of all, I think that the whole point about talent acquisition is about how do I make sure that I attract the right type of talent that are then the best people for helping me to grow the organization, make it successful. And so very often people don't realize that whenever they're hiring people, that's the biggest decision what they do as an organization. And what it means then in practice is that you have to overinvest in the let's say the pipeline building of the talent and really in that entire review process. But then if you are let's say a busy CEO or busy line manager, you just don't have the time to do the harvesting and talent attraction and marketing and all that. And that's where then AI type of tools then make it much more powerful. So we can then reach out to, let's say, thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of attractive candidates, try to activate the passive talent, and then, of course, then make that sort of review process itself smoother. As said, AI, at least at this point, shouldn't be making any decisions, and so can't do that, but it can facilitate still that process, and so making it easier and smoother then for then the managers to then to make the right call. And to have as many data points kind of supporting that decision, of course, is critical as well.
I think it's soon time to start us wrapping things up. And a question we ask everybody at the end, knowing our audience, what do you think, will recruiters be needed in 5 years' time? Or will they all be replaced by AI?
I think, interesting question. So I'd say absolutely yes, it will be needed. Are they required in the same quantities? Not 100% sure. We're going to see big, transitions in all industries, not just in this space. But I think that still, it's ultimately it's a human connection, human decision, and finding kind of the culture fit, determining whether this person actually is a good match for this organization. I think that there is always going to be a human connection there. How much of that decision making we can actually then push to the line managers, who are then ultimately kind of making decisions that who is the best fit for my team.
Yeah,
we probably see a bit more of that transition there, that the line managers are going to become more active decision makers there. But I still say that kind of that skill set itself of recruiters, understanding human capital in the broader sense, what are then the right ways of interviewing and reviewing talent and so on. But I think that skill set still very much is required. But yeah,
I actually have one more question.
Go ahead.
Because you look very different areas or very different markets from your point of view. Do you see that in the emerging markets like Africa or somewhere else, is there something happening that will more like a big trend in recruitment that you think that will land to Europe or more like Western markets at the moment?
I say that, in many ways it's very similar, but I'd say that one of the big trends and one of the things what I'm also pushing myself at the moment is that we should not be looking at the talent market as something that is static and bound to the borders of a nation.
Yeah.
And so we should be, even think about growth of Finland as well going forward. If we just limit ourselves to the 5.5 million people we are at the moment, we're not going to survive in the global economy. We have to think about the globe as our talent pool. And then that leads then to models where some of your team members may be working from, let's say, Kenya or Ho Chi Minh City, wherever then they are. And so kind of we are more entering this sort of global talent pool phase, especially in the knowledge industry, where it doesn't really matter where you are. There are a lot of industries where you still need people to do physical labor, and so therefore that. But I said that's something that I'm seeing there, and I'm seeing also those markets being capable of actually providing European and US markets with qualified and skilled talent, and so that's something that is actually changing quite rapidly. So we have actually dozens of companies, Fuzu being one of them, who are operating in this sort of remote global workforce industry, and there are hundreds of thousands of people already in our markets supporting US companies or European companies.
Yeah.
And so I say that that's one mega trend.
And that's spreading across even more traditional industries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also then in going back to the future of Finland, I think that it's something that is fundamental that we also get right. And we are not too narrow-minded in terms of who's a good fit for my organization, and should I just limit my focus to the people in my immediate vicinity or
speaking my language.
Exactly. And so we just have to become more international in that sense. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, I think we have covered quite a lot of interesting discussion about the topic. Thank you, Jussi, for being our guest, and thank you, Jussi number 2, for being a co-host. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Reccast in the podcast series or service of your choice. Follow Reccast in LinkedIn so you also get notified if there is something interesting happening at our side. Thank you.